And so, so I'm a senior journalist for BBC News. I work on the team that looks after all the social channels for BBC News. That entails basically working with more junior journalists in producing the content, working with the BBC News team in the newsroom on what's coming next, what we can do for them, what they can do for us. And that's covering kind of every kind of social platform you can think of. So I studied multimedia journalism at Bournemouth University many years ago. So it's actually quite cool to be back on a uni campus, which I've not been on for 10 years. So it's quite cool to be back. And yeah, that basically set me up to just jump straight into doing journalism, which is really fun. I started my career as a video journalist for a news agency. For those who don't know what a news agency is, they basically create and collect content to then sell on to like newspapers, TV channels. They'll be the first one in the DMs of a viral video going, did you take this video? We'll give you money for it. And then they sell it on basically. So that was my first job where I basically sold my soul to the devil. And then I left and went to local news to kind of get my soul back. And then from there, I went on to work at several national newspapers, most recently the I paper, where I went from being their social media editor to the audience editor to associate digital editor. And then I'm training for a half marathon, as most people in their 30s are. So it's just what we do. It's what happens when you hit 30. And I have a cat called Nala, who does feature later on in the presentation. And she has her own TikTok account, which I neglect most of the time, but it's a fun thing to do. So what we'll be looking at, why should you make a TikTok or a reel, and why are publishers doing it? How do you make these videos? What types of news videos are there? So what formats are already being used by news publishers? Who is your audience? Who are you making this for? Who should you be making it for? Are you asking those questions before you're putting together a piece or a video? And when should you post? I feel like everybody always asks me this. And I might give you an answer. So why do news publishers use TikTok? TikTok is the social platform for under 25s. Younger groups now, this is part quoted from the Reuters report from 2023. Younger groups consume more news video via social networks, especially in a vertical video format, than any other time, and they're less likely to access video via websites or apps. Content is often personality led on these platforms. Like, you're just so used to scrolling and seeing another person's face, which is what makes it so engaging. You feel like you're connecting with them. It feels more authentic. And actually that's really hard for news publishers to replicate, because I mean, we've got the kind of news readers, but they change. They're obviously doing the TV channel. We can't just get them on our TikTok all the time. And also staffing that has been a challenge in terms of growing a presence on TikTok for news publishers, is having those kind of recognizable people to cut through. So as I've said, TikTok is the social platform for under 25s, and it's our responsibility as journalists to bring the news to where our audience are. They live on TikTok, so we need to bring it to them before other people do, and maybe don't do it as authentically or correctly as we would as trained journalists. It also, which is one of the things I love the most about it, is it has so much potential for creativity. It's just endless. You can turn, I'll kind of touch on it when I look at the different video formats, but there's so many ways you can transform a story into a TikTok video. So here we have News Daddy. Does anybody follow him? I don't think he's a trained journalist, but he is one of the biggest news accounts on TikTok. And yeah, so he has 10.7 million followers. This made me slightly happy yesterday when I saw that. So I shot this from the BBC News TikTok account, and I love that he follows us, but we don't follow him back. Just my little win for the day. And then some of the other biggest accounts, obviously extremely personality led. You know those people, they are intensely famous to a younger generation, but show that to somebody probably my age that doesn't work in social, and they'd be like, I don't know who they are. So it's really important to kind of know your audience and where they are. Yeah, and that's that's an example of news editors a couple of years ago going, nah, no. So Instagram as well, as obviously we're looking at Reels too. Reels imitates TikTok. Don't tell them I said that, within a much broader kind of social platform. It's still home to a young audience, just not as young as TikTok. It's more kind of home to the millennial rather than the Gen Z. And it allows for creativity like TikTok does, but more of a kind of online community as well. It's a slightly more return audience than TikTok can be. And kind of with the kind of grid and that sort of thing and pictures and the variety of posting options, you can kind of garner that community a bit more. It can also support a referral strategy, which editors love, because you can actually get people to go back to your news website, which is the ultimate goal that we all work towards and we all want to happen. So you can do that with the link in bio. You can see here where we've got our link in bio at the top there. Each of our posts here will be tap the BBC News link in bio to read the story in full. You want to inform your audience. You can only do that so much and keep it engaging on a social media platform. And you want people to still consume your news in the fullest. But like TikTok, the content is often personality led. So again, news publishers can struggle to cut through. We've gone through a bit of a weird time in the last few years. I mean, I've worked in social media now since 2015 for news publishers, and it has changed a lot. I used to do Facebook Lives from the side of like motorways and be like, oh, there's a big traffic jam on the M3, don't go there. And that would get like 10,000 people watching, which is insane. But that's just local news for you. To now where people are going live again on TikTok. Like for so many years, we were just like, lives are dead. And like, if somebody mentioned a live in a newsroom, it was like, oh, so out of touch. And it was literally like 2 years old. But video is the huge current driving force of social platforms. It's how people want to consume content. And how they want to create it as well. So it's kind of on us to create it with them. In 2016, Facebook announced it was going video first, much to the absolute horror of social media teams across all newsrooms. I worked at metro.co.uk at the time, and there was a huge meeting kind of across Metro, Daily Mail, and there was panic. And basically publishers scrambled to create video specific pages. We had to put in strategies of how many videos we were going to post a day. I think at one point we were posting like 12 videos a day on our Facebook page because that was the only way we could stay in line with the algorithm and it loving us. And also there was a mass hiring of video journalists and video social media producers as well. Then came TikTok. And just Facebook and Twitter just couldn't match it. And they're now kind of, I'd probably call them like legacy platforms. And they're kind of dying a little bit. But yeah, they've had a rough few years. So we've obviously got Mark there with the Senate hearings about child safety. There's obviously the TikTok ban in the US and the constant kind of chat around that, whether other countries will follow suit. A lot of newsrooms kind of ban journalists having TikTok on their phone. I think that was like last year. And there's just kind of continual narrative around that. And then obviously can't do this without having Elon Musk involved. He probably makes more headlines now than Twitter does itself. So yeah, they've had stalling audiences, no longer supporting news publishers, barely work with the teams now, whereas before we had quite good relationships. And yeah, making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Yeah, watch out, Zuck. Eyes, terrifies. I won't leave that on there for long. And now a graph, which is very unlike me, and it's the only one you're getting, so don't worry. But yeah, this is from the Reuters News report last year. Still eagerly awaiting the one for this year. But it basically just shows kind of the drop off of what everything I've just said, basically. So the blue line is Facebook, with the 2018 cliff edge there. Really see that just crashing down. And then with the rise, the black line there of TikTok. WhatsApp increasing, Instagram rising and then kind of staying steady as TikTok came up. And again, like Snapchat staying steady there too. So yeah, interesting. What's next? So social platforms have a long history of copy and paste, and this won't stop. What works on one social media platform, another platform will go, oh, I like that, I'll take that on. Reels, TikTok. Instagram is basically the place where you get sent that TikTok you saw a week ago, and then you can't tell your friend because then you're just that person that's like, oh, I've already seen it. You have to just be like, oh, and then move on. And then actually what's horrifying is I got sent a TikTok on Instagram that was actually a Vine from 10 years ago. I don't know if anyone here knows what Vine even is. But yeah, that's the original video platform, which came out about 2009, 2010, before dying a fiery death. And they're now doing the circuit again on TikTok, which is very scary. So yeah, so here's just some examples of kind of borrowed ideas on Instagram, especially. So feed posts, very reminiscent of Facebook and Reddit. Stories came up after Snapchat took off. Reels, TikTok, Vine, YouTube, and then DMs as well. Very similar to the way that they kind of enhanced DMs with literally within the last 5 years. They used to be so basic and you just wouldn't be seen anywhere near DMs on a social media platform. And now it's actually how I talk to most of my friends outside of WhatsApp. In terms of what's next for working in social media, you cannot be complacent. You must constantly adapt, innovate, know your data, repurpose your content to make the most of what you have, which we'll be looking at in this presentation in terms of, I'm going to be looking at how you make a TikTok and then how we transfer that over to being a reel, just because it's kind of how a lot of newsrooms do it now. And that's just kind of the approach that we use, and check for errors as well. That is such a huge part of my job and always has been, but even more so joining BBC News, you're held to a much higher standard. But there is nothing worse than working on a video for 6 hours, putting it up, and then the first comment is somebody telling you you've spelled something wrong in the thumbnail. Like, kill me. And yeah, this is a really great account that I follow. Basically, nobody will remember your salary, your fancy title, how busy you were, how stressed you were, how many hours you worked, but people will remember that one time you made a typo on Twitter. And if you ask anyone in social media, they all have their own horror story of an error on a social media platform, or a funny one they saw a colleague do, and they'll just never forget it. And yeah, and do you know what? Like, just don't take it personally when a billionaire takes over a social media platform and you have to completely ditch a social media strategy based around Twitter moments that you spent 6 weeks working on and launched, and then it completely crashed and burned because they sacked everyone that works on it. Don't take it personally, just move on, Tash. Yeah, thanks. So what's next in terms of platforms? So YouTube Shorts, swiftly becoming as prominent as kind of Reels and TikTok. There's a huge community on YouTube. It's often slightly outside of the mainstream, but it's still, you obviously still get quite a lot of views. Like, we're still hitting like 50,000 views on a YouTube short. Longer form video, that's coming back. It was very much vertical, but obviously now there's options on TikTok to watch things horizontally, and in kind of longer form or episodic. I'm an absolute sucker for watching something and it's like part 1 of 89 and I'm like, yes, I will commit to this, and then suddenly it's 5 hours later and I don't know what I've done with my life. And then also pic posts, so that's like a swap with Instagram now, that you can now do pic posts on TikTok, which are really fun to do. I really like them. We've started doing them. I may have had some influence in us doing this one. I'm going to have some water now. But next, we're going to look at how to make TikToks and Reels. Are you all with me so far? Cool. When can a story be turned into a TikTok or a Reel? The answer is any story can be turned into a TikTok or a Reel. You've just basically got to have what makes a good story, and you've got a good video there. The point at which a TikTok or a Reel was suggested can also depend on a number of things. What content do you have available? Does it have video? Does it have pictures? Do you have permission to tell that story? Do you have everything that would make it as legally sound as you would if you were writing an article online? Social production capacity. Do you have time to make this? Is this something that you can fit into around writing that article or doing something else that you need to desperately do. And also willingness of those involved. Does your editor actually want a TikTok video? Will they let you do it? Can you do it? And then prove to them that it was a good idea. So yeah, it's ultimately, there's a lot of things involved. And that's sort of split into 3 things, I think. So like video first. So we've got this one from the London Marathon at the weekend. The story there is the video. So that obviously then it's a video, that can be a TikTok. Fridge carrying man proposes during London Marathon. This guy called Daniel carried a fridge all of the London Marathon and then proposed to his girlfriend just after London Bridge, which was cute. So yeah, that was literally a horizontal shot. I think they knew what they were doing. Did a horizontal shot, which looked great on our website. And then it was just at the right dimensions that we could then crop in and get everything in for the vertical cut. Article first. So a lot of our job on the BBC News social team is spotting articles on our website, if they're performing well on other social media platforms, or we just kind of like the look of them, get that kind of social media gut instinct, and you're like, that will bang on TikTok, let's do that. And that's when we work with the kind of teams behind those and ask them, hey, you got any video with this? Have we got pictures? Can we do this? And I really like doing it that way, because often you'll reach journalists who haven't used social media or TikTok in this way before, and you're kind of teaching them as well as getting a good TikTok out of them. And then planned content. So another one example here for London Marathon. Is this something that can be planned for? We know when the London Marathon is. Let's plan to do some videos ahead of time. Who can we speak to? This is one of the runners, Charlotte Purdue. God, I hope I've got a name right there. But yeah, we organised an interview with her before the London Marathon. Then we put that up on the day of. You can kind of do that with longer run-ins. It helps a lot when you can plan content. So what are the key ingredients if you've got a story and you want to put it, you want to turn it around and make it into a TikTok? Subject. Have you got somebody interesting? Have you got an interesting angle? Structure. Do you know how this could look as a video? Do you know how it's going to look as an article first? Have you got everything you need? And presentation. Have you got that killer headline? Have you got great pictures? So yeah, they're kind of the key ingredients I'd look at. So who is it? Is it someone your audience is interested in? And is it somebody that's compelling? That is somebody, so say on like TikTok, you want somebody to be relatable largely with a younger audience. So say there was like a big car accident and had an old man kind of moaning about moaning about the traffic, and it's just old guy. That is instantly a turn on for my younger audience. If you have somebody, or I think somebody needs. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you want somebody engaging and somebody relatable. There are ways around it. So if you've got an older man who's moaning about something, that's instantly, I'm not interested, it's the old guy moaning. But if you can frame that as granddad who missed daughter's wedding, devastated due to massive car accident, that's instantly like, oh my God, I have a granddad. I'm so sad with this man right now. That's how you make it interesting. Zoom it in onto that person, make it compelling. Inform people. Can you make it interesting enough for them to stick and watch your video all the way through? This one down here from the iPaper is a really, really amazing features piece. And it's Parkinson's patients and the effects of music on their symptoms. And you literally watch them go from having quite severe symptoms of their disease to putting on these headphones, and they like disappear. It's amazing. I did cry when I first watched it. And that is just a really powerful video. It came from a long features piece that they did for their website in the newspaper. And that is just, no matter who that person is, that's interesting to a lot of people. Where is it? Is it on location? Can you distinctively see where that location is from the kind of shots that you have. Is it a captured moment? So we've got this one here of an e-bike exploding. That's obviously very shocking, and will draw people in. What else? So yeah, CCTV footage is great. Going back to kind of the what, health stories work really well, just because they answer a lot of questions. And that is often the case with videos and what people want from them. So in terms of also in terms of like COVID and during lockdowns and stuff, that's really where kind of explainer videos took off, especially we did a lot when we were at the Eye, and worked around that too. Structure, scripts are so important. They can help you build your structure and your narrative, as important as knowing like your article. It's so easy to start with an amazing video idea. This is my opening shot, then it goes to that, then this happens, and then you kind of lose interest because the first bit's so exciting and you've spent 2 hours editing that one bit and then you've actually forgotten how it ends. And then that's not a complete video. So it's really important to script it out. Does it make sense? Do you have everything you need? This also helps with commissioning as well. So if you are asking to do a TikTok, if you have a rough script and structure, you can then also make kind of preparations in case you don't get the shots you're expecting, and go, okay, well, I didn't get that interview with that guy, but actually I spoke to his sister and she was a lot more interesting. So we're actually doing an extra 30 seconds of her speaking. So just kind of, it helps you work around things. Grab your audience. How can you make the first few seconds engaging? Like, you know, from using TikTok, you're swiping through. What is going to make you stop and watch that story? And keep your audience. Pick up the pace, work in faster shots. As somebody who learned kind of video editing when I was at uni, the pace of editing in TikToks is so much faster. And a lot of the time we send options for like videos, and it will be like a documentary team who's used to working like longer form or working in TV, and they'll go, I've done your TikTok cut. And we're like, oh great, send it over. And we're like, this is really good, and it is in vertical, but this isn't a TikTok cut. And then we literally make it like bam, 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 and they're like, oh, but you only see that shot for like 3 seconds. That took me a day to film. And you're like, I'm sorry. That is just how people want to see it. People get bored, they'll swipe off it. If you're in a shot for too long, they're like, oh, next one. And keep it simple as well. Presentation, thumbnail, that's your headline basically. How can you sell it and be accurate and encourage people to watch? Branding, is it recognizable as your organization? So this one here, that's the Daily Mail there, so they use blue. Are using the same presenter as other videos? So this is kind of a good way in which news publishers have sort of matched that kind of personality-led aspect of TikTok and Instagram, which is they'll have specific presenters they use for their TikToks and Reels. And even though those aren't like known people, they sort of become known within feeds as, oh, there's that girl that does the BBC News TikToks, I know her. And then it's, even if they don't consciously think that, they'll recognize them and stay on them. And that kind of breeds like trust as well, which is great. And then the sell as well. What extra detail can you include? And depending on the tone, you can have some fun with this, and a bit more fun than you would with like Instagram. And hashtags too. What is relevant? What will reach those audiences? And also watch out for kind of banned hashtags that can then get kind of your videos like blocked and they don't really land in the feed. So they'd be anything to do with like violence, or like vaping's a random one that's shadow banned, which is really annoying. So how to pitch your TikTok or Reel? As I've said, so what is the most engaging angle of your story? Know your top line, but be ready to have it tweaked. Try not to be annoyed about that. What assets do you have? Do you have a video interview? Do you have strong images or found footage? You can use still images in a TikTok. There's ways within like CapCut to kind of create movement on those still images. Next time you're scrolling through TikTok, kind of watch out for how many videos you watch that aren't videos, that are just images with somebody talking to those images, or videos with a voiceover, and see how and why you stay engaged with those, because they are still as strong as video. And then, oh, sorry. Put a script together, it's very important. And then who are you pitching to? Different people may want different things. So they may want you to say when you start, I will write my article in the next 2 hours if you let me do a TikTok. That might be how you need to pitch it. It might be that you need to kind of explain the benefits of being there, like actually your story is angled towards younger people, so you want to reach that audience, and not just have it go out on Twitter and hope that their aunt or uncle who has Twitter will send it to them in the family WhatsApp group. Social team, if you're pitching it to them, would they prefer you to do your own version, or can you kind of get one of them to do it and learn from them? And then, yeah, as mentioned, will it take too much away from the online piece? Again, shout out work and social, they said, my favorite accounts. Yeah, when you thought the TikTok you spent 2 hours editing is going to go viral. Oh, it happens way more than you like expect, and you're just like, this the one, this, and then it's not. So most of the time, if you think it is, it's not. Yeah. Cool. So types of news video formats. So that's kind of the background to making TikToks. This is looking at what video formats are out there that news publishers use at the moment. And maybe if you're working on a piece for a project, you can kind of see going through these where your pieces land and how it could look. So a news moment. So we have this one from the Taiwan earthquake, where metal beams were like falling off this skyscraper, which was harrowing. And yeah, really shocking. And that is the moment of the news. So the earthquake is happening. That is the news moment. An explainer. We do these quite a lot with our BBC Verify team. It's normally taking a topic or news event and breaking that down and explaining the events in terms of timeline, what happened. They can be used to answer questions around a topic as well. Often we'll be informed from what people are Googling, and we'll answer that. It's also a good way to kind of battle misinformation. So taking that misinformation and going, look, I know you're all sharing this, but this isn't real and this is why. Shout out to cloud seeding in Dubai. And then the interview clip. So not just news organizations, this is kind of across the board of companies using TikTok. They'll take an interview and then they'll use the kind of top line from the interview that will probably be the article written on site, and then share that around and it will become that viral clip. On location package. So again, with the Taiwan earthquake, we had one of our correspondents, Rupert, in Taiwan, and he got the train overnight to one of the worst affected areas. And literally, God love him, he stood next to piles of rubble and literally shot and just talked to camera for about 5 minutes, and then just emailed it to us and said, hey guys, I've just done this, let me know if you want it. And we did, and it was brilliant. And I wish all our correspondents did that because it was perfect. Archive. So this obviously depends on the organisation that you're working for and what you have access to. The BBC literally has its own archive department, which is amazing, and I'd love to work there. But this is kind of around our sort of, when I was saying about planned content. So we had this go out on April Fool's Day, and it was a video from, I think, the 1960s. When it said, this is a village in the Alps that grows spaghetti, here's how they harvest it, and they put all this spaghetti on trees and had people like harvesting it, and I think everyone believed it. But yeah, that did really well for us, kind of being shared again, and it's great to kind of have those archive videos available. And then breaking news. So again, depends on the company that you work for and the kind of access to content you have. News channels do this exceptionally well because they will always be able to be on screen telling you the breaking news as it's happening, and then probably have somebody in that place that they can then go to and do a segment from. So we actually really struggled with this when I worked at newspapers, because we obviously were a news company, but because we were a newspaper or a website, we didn't have the way to like visualize the breaking news as it happened, other than maybe just doing like a plain graphics card. But this is why kind of ITV News, Sky News, BBC News all do, and Channel 4 do really well on TikTok with sharing these is because they literally have it from their news channel and can have somebody in front of a camera within seconds.
Chicken's cooked.
Staying hydrated. So yeah, so a little bit of a closer look at a couple of those. News moments. The moment news happens, it's also a moment related to a major news event. So the Baltimore Bridge collapse that happened quite a few weeks ago, the moment that happened is a news moment. The moment a day later when President Biden spoke about it and sent his prayers to the victims' families, that's also a news moment. So it's kind of when it happens and when people are talking to it. This elephant on the loose in Montana, that is absolutely a news moment and just love to see it. It probably would have been a story without the video. There's an elephant on the loose, but the fact that there was a video makes it such a good video moment. It can be anything at any point on the life cycle of a news story. And ultimately, it's a video that shocks and grabs attention. So what else have we got here? We've got so the flooding in Dubai, that was so shocking. Yeah, news moment, the Copenhagen Stock Exchange on fire. Lots of videos of that. Very reminiscent to when the Notre Dame in Paris was on fire. And there was a lot of video footage of that, as it's obviously very popular with tourists. And then it can also be something like a CCTV footage shot of like thieves stealing things. And then that is like the story around which maybe they've been sentenced or something like that. You can then go back to that news moment of when it happened and reshare it and get a second bite of the explainers. These are my favorites. I love making an explainer. I think it's really fun. And it's a great way to work with journalists and turn their content into just something more. So it's usually presenter-led or kind of a voiceover over images and video. We've got Merlin again from our Verify team. She's great because she's very willing to just jump in front of a camera and record an explainer for us. It explores a news piece in more depth. And yeah, as I said, it often answers why or how questions and provides answers. And it's really, really good for looking at health stories and disinformation, and then looking back at kind of larger news events as well. So this one here was a health piece. I actually think it started off as a local health piece, and then it went into a wider one about the like glucose monitoring and how legit it is, which was really interesting, looking at how it actually benefited people outside of people with diabetes and how accurate it was. So yeah, and obviously that's wildly popular, especially on TikTok. So it was kind of cool to bring something that is so widely advertised on TikTok and then question that and be like, can you believe everything you're seeing? And ultimately, it's a really good way to engage and inform people, but also entertain them. And we're not entertainers, we're journalists, but in creating these videos that are engaging, you want to have a level of entertainment there to keep people watching. Interview clip, the original viral TikTok interview clip there for ones that know. I have never had a Negroni spagliato, but I will always think of this video clip when I order one or if I ever do. For those that don't know, it was an interview clip by HBO Max with the release of House of Dragon. It was two cast members interviewing each other, asking what their favourite drinks were. What's your drink of choice? Oh, Negroni. And that was it. That was a viral moment and it went crazy and most people don't even know where it comes from. But amazing work by that PR team and it really took off. How else it can be used. So we had Scoop released a few weeks ago by Netflix. This was one of the interviews on BBC News of Billie Piper and Gillian Anderson. And then this was one done by Asia Network with Dev Patel too, jumping in on the James Bond narrative. Everybody wanted to talk about that. So what is an interview clip? Speaks for itself. A well-known person saying something interesting. Potentially viral clip, very shareable and really good at reaching fan bases of celebrities. and people just being obsessed with like celebs and what they're saying. It'll often be the kind of angle that they do the video on will be what the news piece is based on. But it can also support kind of the cross promotion of like a longer video or podcasts. Touch on this a little bit later, but actually like the podcast format has gone insane on TikTok. And a lot of the time now people will attempt to shoot video as if it's for a podcast, sometimes when it's not, because of how quickly those kind of viral podcast moments can go. And actually, it would be interesting to know how many of those viral podcasters that you see on TikTok are actually viral podcasters and not just viral TikTokers using a podcast setup to get your attention. Package. So essentially this is the TikTok and vertical version of the one that you're probably used to seeing on the nightly news. It's essentially a package of content with a presenter on location, speaking through a story from start to finish. It's very much how it traditionally would have been. So somebody sat at a desk, here's the headline for this story. Now over to Tash, who is on location in Newcastle discussing this story. Then it's probably a shot of me walking down the street talking to a camera. Now it is me walking down the street talking into my phone. And these have really taken off. They've sort of transferred over to TikTok quite well in the last couple of years. And it feels like a lot of kind of correspondents have given in. They're like, fine, I'll do one of these now. But then you obviously get really great content here. So yeah, structure similar to TV channel. And yeah, it's great for correspondents. A lot of the time how we sell it to them is it's a way for them to reach a new audience that is outside the news at 10. And I like it that it brings kind of journalists who are great in their jobs to like a new generation. So we've got Alex Crawford here, who, yeah, if I ever met Alex Crawford, it's probably the only journalist I'd be like, oh my gosh. And she has worked for Sky News and for like years and years and is always in very dangerous locations. But yeah, she did this amazing kind of walk down through a street talking about kind of everything that was going on, just calmly, correctly, in a way that only a correspondent with that many years could do. And yeah, as mentioned, this was Rupert in Taiwan. I'm gonna see if I can click on this and not break everything. Okay.
Okay, I'm now in the city of Hualien on the east coast of Taiwan. I managed to get here this morning when the train line from Taipei reopened early this morning. They worked really hard through the night to get the train line open. We've got to the city of Hualien. Let's take a look at the building behind me here. This is leaning over at a fairly, you see that? Leaning over at a very terrifying angle. This is one of the buildings that was brought down during the quake yesterday. They are now trying to reinforce the building. You can see that heavy earth-moving equipment there. They're reinforcing the building, holding it up, because this morning there has still been a lot of aftershocks here in Hualien, and they're worried that these buildings that have been damaged could come down, could collapse down and cause a lot more destruction and injury. So that's what's going on here in Hualien. The search and rescue operation here in the city is really already over.
So yeah, so that was that package there. Rupert literally sent that to us as just straight footage of him speaking to his phone. We then put other cuts over the top of that. We put our branding. See if I can through to this one.
This camp is mainly full of Palestinians, the Shatila camp. There's thousands of Palestinians, some of whom have been here for decades, 5, 6 decades. And the feeling is that they're almost unworried about any escalation. They see it possibly as a way to gain more rights for Palestinians, to raise their profile even higher. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration that somehow the Palestinian cause has been set to one side. And now people, the politicians, the world is getting distracted when really they should be focusing on, according to the people here, Palestinian rights.
Cool. So a couple of examples there. Really engaging, really make you kind of want to listen and draw you into being in that exact place. And yeah, a lot of these, it's our work on social media teams is making them as grabby as possible within those first few seconds, so people don't swipe away from them. These sorts of packages are used to having people's attention for that whole package when it's on the news at 10. They don't have that luxury on TikTok. How do we then make it more grabby coming straight in? So those are the types of news formats. Hopefully some of those look familiar to you. Some of them kind of are a bit inspiring to what you could apply to your own work. So let's look at some editing tips. This is my cat. This is me doing a mock video on her TikTok. She likes to sit on my bed and yell at the pigeons outside the window. This is the sort of videos that do very well on her TikTok. It's not a news video, but just for kind of illustrating purposes, I thought I'd throw it back in. So opening shots. How can you have that engaging opening shot? What will draw people in? What will make people stop scrolling in their feeds? Do you need to overlay a stronger image? So an example of this is last week, we had an interview with somebody who was speaking about Rishi Sunak. The person speaking wasn't that well known. They were part of a committee on climate change. And actually the opening shot of them wasn't very grabby. Like people wouldn't know who he was to look at. So what we did is we overlaid a sort of slightly moving image of Rishi Sunak, just so the opening shot of that TikTok with the headline was "Climate Chief Criticises Rishi Sunak." That then is, you know, that TikTok is about Rishi Sunak, even though he's not in it, but it kind of gives you everything straight away and you're like, oh, what's that? And it will hopefully stop people to watch it. Thumbnail, how are you kind of stopping people in their tracks to see it? It will have to be a slightly condensed headline. You still want it to be accurate. You still want it to be legally sound. And you also don't want it to be too baity, because people will see through that. If you're like, oh my God, look at this. Like, what could he do next? Or something like that. People will see through it and literally not give it the time of day. So you've kind of got to have that balance. In-app text, you need some more text throughout the piece to explain it slightly more. So that video we had earlier of the marathon runner proposing to his girlfriend, the moment that he kind of proposes, there's a lot of screaming. And we just put an extra like text on there saying she said yes, just to like, so people knew that she said it. But it just adds a little bit more and adds some voice to a piece that maybe doesn't have a voiceover to it. And then, yeah, increasing pace using clips. So can you kind of, when you're editing an app, can you shorten these clips? Can you chop them up? Can you like chop one in half and then put it either side or something to make it feel like it's moving a bit faster, and do it that way? How to record a voiceover. Who has done a voiceover on TikTok before? Anybody here? Anyone? One person? Nice, cool. So they're not actually that hard. And I kind of look at it as you have to like think you're a journalist. Like I still do that now. Like I'm a journalist, but also when I do a voiceover, I'm like, right, now I'm a journalist. I've sort of go into that character, high imposter syndrome. But yeah, so doing a voiceover, we all know how they kind of should sound. And it's that slightly more formal version of our voice. And it's kind of understandable. The first thing when you're recording one is soundproofing. This is something that really helps make a voiceover not distracting. It makes it become part of a video, and there's not like banging or crashing, and it also focuses the sound into the mic. At work, I can go and do this in a radio studio because that's the luxury of my job. If you need to do one at home, I also have done this when I've been working from home. I will go under my duvet and literally make like a sound booth and have my laptop in front of me, and then record from under there. I know I have colleagues who have done it. They've got like a big walk-in coat cupboard and they'll literally sit in the bottom of their coat cupboard, put coats around them, record like that. Or a wardrobe if my wardrobe is not big enough to do that. But yeah, anything that sort of proofs the sound around you, give it a go and listen to the sound difference. It is mad. And duvets are probably, I'd say duvets are the best to do. Just make sure you're not touching the duvet as you're doing it, because then there will be a rustle. So the actual recording, you can use headphones or smartphones. I tend to I've got a Google Pixel. I just tend to record like this. I'll keep it kind of probably a hand's length away from my mouth so that you're not kind of getting like into the microphone. That also then means that you won't kind of garble the noise if it's too close or you're too loud. And the quality then is good. You've then got it to hand, then transfer over to your computer or put straight into your TikTok or Instagram app. Also, if you're using kind of smartphones or your headphones, it might come out a little bit quiet, but you can enhance that later on. Normally the quality is fine. So don't worry about too much about that, but you can kind of like auto enhance it within like editing platforms. So in terms of like recording and like the pace, you kind of, for TikTok, most of the time, you want a slightly brighter voiceover. And actually instantly you can have a brighter tone by smiling. I say this a lot to a lot of the team when they're recording voiceovers. If it's obviously if it's a slightly somber story, we slow it down a bit and we won't be smiling when we do the voiceover. But say, what was that mad piece from earlier? The little boy that won the seagull squawking competition. Love that story. So if you're talking about that, you can be like, this is the story of the young boy who won a seagull squawking competition. Instantly, I sound happier, brighter. It also slightly picks up the pace too. And yeah, just give it a go. Record lots of different versions and see how they sound. I would say record, if you have a full script, record your script in one go, even if you sort of have to repeat the sentences a couple of times, just keep doing it in order. Just because you can kind of sound like you're coming to the end of a script when you are coming to the end of a script. You don't want the last line to sound like you're reading it for the first time as the first line. So yeah. And then an editing tips with voiceovers is remove the breath gaps in between the speeches. So when you have got those sentences lined up in your editing software, just cut the dead noise bits, and you might think, oh God, that's going to sound mental. Probably similar to how I'm speaking right now, but actually it just increases that pace. I had one the other day where I was sent a TikTok cut. I then removed all the breath sounds from it, and I think I got rid of like 15 seconds of that video. So you're also cutting it down at the same time. Then the final bit, so like graphics, do you need like extra graphics to tell the story better? Love a sound wave on a story if you've got like, if the story is about a sound clip, having the sound wave on there instantly makes it recognizable that this is a sound I need to listen to, and will make people click into it. Captions. This was a video of the actress Hannah Waddingham having a go at a photographer. And just to match her energy, we did big captions on what she was saying. I think I click through to this. So yeah, I feel like that matched her energy. You also can't always rely on captions to come up. So if you're worried about accessibility on your piece, sort of obviously TikTok and Instagram does offer the option to put closed captions on, but they sometimes don't appear. Some publishers will then make the decision to put captions on the videos before exporting them so that it's accessible to everybody. So if people can't listen, they can see it and follow along. What software? So use the platforms. They've got great, it's got so much better, and they are actually really good to use in platform. So use the TikTok editing software, use Instagram. It used to be that Instagram really favored reels made in reels, but I feel like that's what they were just telling people so they wouldn't just put TikToks on there. But a lot of creators tend to make their Instagram reels within kind of Instagram software. CapCut is really popular. There's a free version and it's also used by a lot of creators. We use it a fair bit as well, and it's good for like additionals and like adding those captions. And then also there's obviously like further video editing software like Final Cut or Premiere Pro, but they are expensive. So I've talked a lot about TikToks. How do you then turn that into a reel? Repurposing your content. This is such a key thing when you work in social media. Social media teams are chronically understaffed, underfunded. That's just how we roll. And it just means that we've had to find ways to repurpose our content for multiple platforms. Thankfully, platforms like to steal each other's formats. So the fact that Reels likes TikTok, that's great for us, and we just kind of transfer it across. Video length. So to count as a reel, the video must be a maximum length of 90 seconds. This is being looked at being expanded, but it's not uniform across all of Instagram yet. Like they keep being like, oh, we're going to experiment with 3 minutes. And I'll believe it when I see it and it's fully implemented. But so yeah, 90 seconds, that will get your reel to land within the discovery tab and land in that scrollable function. Just said that. So yeah, do you need to add subtitles to it? Instagram for about 6 months was really reliable for being able to put their own captions on top. Then they just stopped. So now BBC News add theirs. Is it clear? Has it transferred okay over from TikTok? Do you need to make it more accessible? And yeah, double, triple check your spellings on any text that you have on your videos. This is where it can differ even more from TikTok. You don't really get much room on TikTok to write that much in your cell or your caption. But on Instagram, people are much used to seeing longer captions. So you can really take advantage of that. As mentioned, it is great for referrals back to the website, so you can kind of tell part of a story and then say, if you want to read this in full, tap the link in our bio to read it, or well, this is actually related to an incident that happened earlier in the year. You can read more on that in our bio. So make sure you're getting those taps back. And yeah, some examples here of the slightly longer caption lengths that you can get on Instagram. And finally, style. I feel like if you could just copy and paste it over and it would still probably do as well as it could. But some platforms some publishers like to tailor it for each platform. You can remove excess branding, as often a kind of like cleaner look works best on Instagram. It can be slightly slower paced. I'd say Reels is less of a manic scroll than TikTok. But people are kind of, because it's got that more sense of community and people are slightly more loyal to creators, they'll take that time out to watch a reel by somebody that they follow. Whereas TikTok, it's almost the expectation. They're like, come on, grab my attention, grab my attention. And yeah, don't worry about how it looks in your grid. I'm from the Instagram aesthetic generation where we all tried to make our grids look perfect and beautiful. But it doesn't matter. So yeah, this is an example of the, I think this is the Daily Mail's Instagram. They've removed all their thumbnails off of their reels. So we saw their TikTok earlier and it had the blue thumbnails. They've taken them all off for Instagram. Bold move. YouTube Shorts. As mentioned earlier, this is picking up pace and becoming very popular. If you wanted to transfer your video again from TikTok to Reels to YouTube Shorts, it's got to be between 15 to 60 seconds in length. So yeah, it's YouTube's answer to Reels and TikToks. One bonus of being here is that they can be linked or to like related content. So say you've got the piece here, which is a clip from the Salmon interview. You could then link that to the larger YouTube video about like that interview in full or what happened to him. So it's quite a nice way to like link to different pieces of content. Also within YouTube Shorts, the thumbnail that appears here on the preview is I think about 3.5 seconds into the video, which some publishers are looking at. So they're now actually not having a thumbnail at the start of their video. They'll then have it at that 3.5 second point. So yeah, so hopefully that was a lot on making your TikToks. And now just a little look at who is your audience. Just gonna double check. Oh, Carla saying Shorts is bringing so many new subscribers to our channel. Yeah, it's Shorts is really, really good for I'm gonna go back for bringing in subscribers to YouTube channels. It's so interactive and feels like something that's been missing from YouTube for like years and years, and is a really good way in for news publishers actually. It tends to be, you can kind of already see from the previews here of the ones that we put out, it's very like well-known people focused, and they kind of want that celebrity stories, that kind of moment, rather than like an explainer video. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's going to be cool to see where that one goes. Who is your audience? I've said audience a lot, and it is amazing how much people switch off when you say audience. I used to be an audience editor at a newspaper, so I know this firsthand, and literally speaking to a room full of journalists and telling them why they should care about our readers and subscribers is extremely hard. So identifying your audience. What do you mean when we say this? So your audience are your readers, they're your viewers, sometimes they can be your subscribers, and it's basically anyone who interacts with your journalism. So business goals at news publishers often determine who it is they want to reach. With TikTok, if they're focusing on TikTok, that usually means they want to reach that next generation of readers or viewers. They just kind of want to go to where those younger readers are. So yeah, reach new audience. Do you want to grow followers? Do you want to increase clicks back to the website? So this is when it comes to you individually for your TikToks or Reels. Who is your TikTok or your Reel for? I really like this GIF. I actually don't know who that man is, but I love actually, you know. So you should know as the creator of your story or your piece who it's for, who is the intended audience, who will care about this the most. If you're trying to reach a new audience, then why? Does the content reach them? Like I said before, do you have a relatable case study? Is there somebody in your piece that they want to care about, that they will then share and go, oh my God, this happened to me. Oh my God, that looks exactly like my mum when that happened to her. Sometimes you can kind of, as a journalist, get a little bit lost in your own story and you're lost in your own importance in it. So sometimes it's good to kind of take a step back and go, hold on, who am I doing this for? And actually sometimes it can help you reach a different audience. So we had a piece where there was 3 interviews set up, and the producer was going out to film these 3 interviews, and only actually one of them ended up happening. It turned out that that person was the kind of youngest of the trio. And we were like, great, as long as we've kind of got their permission, can we kind of front it on them for our YouTube and Instagram? They're like, yep, absolutely. They're like, oh, it's not really a story aimed at young people. It's about like older people suffering from this. We're like, okay, but you've got a young person talking about it. So what better way to make younger people care? And they're like, oh yeah, that's true. Okay. So just see what you get and how you can work with it. It's always adaptable, which is one of the really good things about working with like video. Is it understandable? If you're taking like a really in-depth health feature, and you're mapping it out and you're explaining it, are you actually explaining it in non-medical or terms or jargon? And this can often be hard to cut through when it's like an expert talking about something. Or even like science journalists. I worked with like science and tech journalists before, and they've sent copy through, and I'm just like, I have no idea what this means. And if I don't know, no one's going to read this or be able to follow what this is. So how do you cut out that jargon? How can you make that jargon fun? So have a science journalist talking about something and then a word pop up that they say, and then do a little explainer, like, hold on, what is this word? Let's explain it. But most of all, you need to make it kind of understandable for your audience. And yeah, how to reach new audiences. Are you bringing the content to where they are? Could you expand your content to reach them? And then, yeah, just make the most of like discovery tools and using the most popular hashtags. When you're uploading a video to TikTok and you put in a hashtag, you should be able to see how interacted it is and how many hashtags have been used. I would say go for like a middle ground. So don't just do like, what's an example? So don't just do, if it's a US story, don't just do hashtag US, because I'm guessing that's going to have 8.3 billion hashtags that have been used for it. If it's a story about somebody in California, do hashtag California. Again, that's probably going to have about 2 million. But then bring it down to kind of, okay, where is that? Okay, it's a town in California, hashtag Glendale. Okay, that's going to then reach a smaller audience. Another good thing about hashtags as well, especially on TikTok, you can use them as a bonus to your cell. So you might not have a specific location in your video or in the cell of your TikTok, but then having hashtag Glendale, hashtag California, you then know where it is and it puts you in that place. Or Fresno, Cheryl. So you know who your audience is. Why is it important to have the right audience? So yeah, this has literally been the constant battle with social media for news publishers. Is yeah, they could literally pump out stories about cute animals or memes all day and become like what's that, like the Archbishop of Banterbury. Does everybody follow that on Instagram? Like it's literally just memes. You're putting that on your story every day, you're sharing that with your friends. That's obviously not what news publishers are for. You'd get 10,000 followers in a day, but that's not like a quality audience. You want to kind of hit the audience that's interested in your topics, and you want to make them care about what you're putting out there. So an audience that wouldn't engage in the things that you want them to is who you'd reach if you literally put out cute animal stories. That's my cat again, by the way. And you want an audience to care about the news and the things that you put out. Cool. I'm going to have some more water. So when to post to TikTok or Instagram. So consistency is key. Scheduling content and work around your staffing is also important. And you can also coordinate with the launch across your kind of website and other platforms. So if you've got an exclusive package that's going out, it's an exclusive story that's got an embargo of like 12 p.m. on a Thursday. You know that article is going to drop on the website at 12. You've got all the social media posts ready to go. You've got the video prep beforehand. Drop it all at once. Obviously, a TikTok for you page isn't linear. It's not then just going to land on everyone's feed at 12 o'clock. But it's still how a lot of news publishers like to push things out. And at least it's out there and available for everybody. But in terms of answering when should you post, there is no single right answer, and I'm very sorry. But it's literally about consistency. Again, work in social media, they said that run of scheduled content adrenaline hits different. It really does. Especially when you've got something dropping at 6 p.m. and then the editor calls you at 10 minutes to and says, actually, we just wanted to say about that video, we're at minute 30 in, we just wanted to change something. No, no, we can't do that in 9 minutes. We will try. But yeah, it is intense. And then one of the biggest things I'd also say is when you have accounts on social media, it's so important kind of making your account a habit. I've talked a lot about this before in like previous masterclasses I've done, and now it's sort of just done and people don't realize they're doing it. So building a habit amongst your audience is kind of having recurring content or topics that breed kind of familiarity and loyalty among your followers. This is called appointment viewing. And you actually probably do it yourself. So is there a podcast that you listen to that comes out every Thursday? Do you go, oh God, that's up on Instagram, I can go and watch that. What are they talking about this week? Or are you reading like traditionally like your favorite columnist on a Saturday? That's appointment viewing, and that's how you kind of breed habit and people kind of coming back to you for what they want. If I just go back, it kind of goes back to this kind of building that right audience and wanting them to keep coming to you and going, oh, I've just had a breaking news notification. Where can I go to find out about that? Because I'm under 30 and I don't want to go to a news app because they're boring. So I'm going to go to TikTok. Who am I going to go to TikTok to find out more about this? And that's where you kind of want to breed that familiarity. And that is sort of how you can kind of cut through that personality led habit that comes from content creators as news publishers. You can sort of push through that. I go back to this one. So yeah, and then also I have here like literally the amount of podcast videos on TikTok that you see. They're everywhere and they literally draw you in. And I don't know what it is about them, but every time you see a new one, you think, oh, it's a new episode. Or you sort of feel like you're listening to that episode and it's just dropped. It is crazy scrolling through TikTok how many videos there are of just people in headphones talking to a microphone. I'm not saying some people create videos just in front of microphones with headphones on to have that same familiarity, but again, that's the habit that's been built. We are so used to seeing these that we'll watch them. When it was like COVID lockdown, how gross was it seeing a Zoom interview on the news? That was so weird. And then that just became like normal. So it's just how you adjust and how things kind of progress on different platforms. My top tips. I couldn't do this without having the Washington Post guy in it as well, who is like the forefront of TikTok for news. Love him. Cool. So use the tools at your disposal. Using all aspects of the platform is one of the things that may get your page featured on the Discover page. Repurpose TikTok content for Instagram and other platforms like YouTube Shorts. Be inspired by content created by your colleagues. I really like working with other people when like putting videos together or working with a producer on it. Somebody who's a lot younger than me as well is always really helpful because they'll kind of know how to hit that young audience. If they're looking at something for an older audience, it's then who is the best to speak to on that. And yeah, engage with your audience as well. Comments are so important. I love comments on TikTok. I love going through and seeing what people say about them. Obviously it can sometimes go a darker way and we have to like monitor comments. But is also how community is created on social media platforms and makes people feel involved and part of the content that you're putting out there.